Spain has announced 3 days of mourning following a train collision in Adamus, in which at least 40 people have died.
All diplomatic solutions must be used to avoid a trade war with the US, but limits must also be set, warned MEP Brando Benifei on Euronews.
US President Donald Trump links the dispute with Europe over Greenland to not getting the Nobel Peace Prize.
China's birth rate plunged to its lowest level on record last year, leading to a shrinking population for a fourth straight year.
Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez vows to uncover the truth after 40 people were killed in a train collision, while also announcing 3 days of national mourning. 1 day after Sunday's tragic accident, Sánchez, accompanied by the Minister of Transport Oscar Puente, paid a visit to the site of the crash in Adamus, Córdoba. Meanwhile, the regional president of Andalusia explained the difficulties rescuers were facing.
La dificultad está en que la maquinaria pesada que estábamos esperando tiene difícil encaje para poder trabajar y poder elevar esos vagones para que puedan trabajar los bomberos y, por tanto, entrar también los médicos forenses, la Guardia Civil y certificar e identificar esas personas fallecidas. Otra opción que podría ser la de ir partiendo, por así decir, los vagones hasta identificar esas personas no fallecidas. Lo que sí parece, y ojalá no fuese así, pero lo que sí parece es que puedan haber personas fallecidas.
In an animation, we can see how the back of one of the trains on a straight stretch of the track, which had been renovated in May 2025, derailed and collided with another oncoming train. Transport Minister Puente has described the incident as tremendously strange. As the death toll could rise, 48 people, including 5 children, remain in hospital, according to officials.
All diplomatic solutions must be used to avoid a trade war, but limits must also be set. This is the warning issued by MEP Brando Benifei in an interview on Euronews show Europe Today. US President Donald Trump threatened on Saturday to impose new tariffs on 8 European countries that don't support his plans to annex Greenland. After an emergency ambassadors meeting in Brussels on Sunday, several sources told Euronews that member states are prioritizing diplomacy and dialogue with Washington. But the Italian MEP insisted there should be a clear deadline.
Well, I think that any tentative to still have a diplomatic solution must be used until the very end. But there must be an end. The problem of Europe is that this end of the tentative to find a diplomatic solution sometimes seems to never end. And this is profited by, in this case, the US, who think we are not credible. We are not serious about the possible consequences. So I think we need to be clear that there would be very bad consequences for the US economy if Trump administration goes in that direction.
One of those measures could be the anti-coercion instrument, a tool adopted in 2023 that has so far never been used. This would allow the bloc to punish unfriendly countries for economic blackmail. However, Benifei said he expects US counterparts to intervene to work with the EU as allies.
US President Donald Trump told Norway's Prime Minister he no longer needed to think purely of peace after failing to win the Nobel Peace Prize in a message published on Monday. Trump, in the message, blamed Norwegian Prime Minister for not giving him the prize. Quote, "Considering your country decided not to give me the Nobel Peace Prize for having stopped 8 wars plus, I no longer feel an obligation to think purely of peace." End of quote. Trump said in the message to Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Store. The authenticity of the message was confirmed by an unnamed diplomat in several media reports on Monday. The US president has long coveted the annual Peace Prize decided by the Norwegian Nobel Committee and not the government. Last week, Venezuela's opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado, gifted her Nobel Peace Prize medal to Trump at the White House. Ahead of Machado's visit to Washington, the Norwegian Nobel Institute, organizers of the prize, said in a statement that the Peace Prize cannot be withdrawn, transferred, or shared once it has been announced. Trump has often boasted about ending 8 wars, styling himself as the president of peace and therefore deserving of the Nobel honor, but those claims have been largely exaggerated.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has been invited to join US President Trump's Gaza Board of Peace, the Kremlin announced on Monday. At least 60 countries have been invited to join the board by the White House for a price of $1 billion each, intended to help Gaza's rebuild. While some world leaders have accepted, many say they need to understand what membership entails.
Да, действительно, президент Путин также получил по дипломатическим каналам приглашение войти в этот состав Совета мира. В настоящий момент мы изучаем все детали этого предложения, в том числе надеемся на контакты с американской стороной с тем, чтобы прояснить все нюансы.
Chiaramente vale quello che ci siamo sempre detti, penso che l'Italia possa giocare un ruolo di primo piano nella costruzione del piano di pace e quindi siamo pronti a fare la nostra parte.
At this stage we can confirm the receipt of the invitation. The President is in close contact with EU leaders on all geopolitical matters and discussions will continue on this topic.
Meanwhile, the new committee has been objected to by Israel, which says it goes against Israeli policy.
הגיעה העת להסביר לנשיא שהתוכנית שלו היא רעה למדינת ישראל ולבטל אותה. עזה היא שלנו, ועתידה ישפיע על עתידנו יותר מאשר על כל אחד אחר.
The official list of participants is expected to be announced by the US in the coming days. On Friday, Trump announced the first appointments to the board, including himself as chair, former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, and US Secretary of State Marco Rubio.
Portugal's far-right presidential candidate André Ventura placed second in the country's presidential election on Sunday, securing a place in a runoff next month against centre-left Socialist Party candidate António José Seguro. Ventura's strong showing was another milestone in Europe's shift to the far right as populist parties have gained a hold on or edged closer to levels of power in recent years. With almost all votes counted, Seguro secured around 31% of the voting share, while André Ventura, leader of the Chega party, captured 24%. The two will face off in the second-round ballot between the two top candidates on 8 February. It was the best result for a socialist candidate since 2001. 9 other candidates ran in what was the most hotly contested presidential election ever in Portugal, but none came close to the 50% required for a first-round victory. The winner will replace President Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa, who has served the maximum limit of 2-year 5 terms.
China's birth rate plunged to its lowest level on record last year, official data showed on Monday, leading to a shrinking population for a 4th straight year despite efforts to curb the decline. The total population in 2025 stood at around 1.4 billion, 3 million less than the previous year. The country is threatened with a demographic crisis after its birth rate halved over the past decade, despite the end of the restrictive one-child policy. Marriage rates are also at a record low, with many young Chinese couples put off from having babies by high child-rearing costs and career concerns. Authorities have attempted to address the issue with a raft of measures, such as childcare subsidies, free public kindergartens, and increased taxes on contraception. Young people in China have largely shrugged off these measures, saying they are not enough to address the problem.
Sentimental Value. A drama about an aging filmmaker and his estranged actor daughter was the talk of the night at this year's European Film Awards. It was closely followed by Surat, an existential road trip which tells the story of a father willing to venture into the Moroccan desert to find his daughter. The award for Best European Documentary went to Igor Besanovich's film O Morte, in which the Croatian filmmaker asked his local town to reenact their 16-month occupation at the hands of the dandy proto-fascist Gabriele D'Annunzio in 1919.
Joaquin Trier's sentimental value has swept the board here in Berlin for the European Film Awards, winning the coveted Best European Film and several other prizes including acting awards, Best Director and Best Screenplay. The film now cements itself as the Europe's frontrunner for the Oscars come March. Elsewhere, Olivia Lach's Sirat has won several awards, and the main surprise of the evening is Jafar Panahi's Palme d'Or winner It Was Just an Accident, going home empty-handed. The Iranian filmmaker did take to the stage to open the ceremony tonight in Berlin, delivering a politically charged speech in which he denounces the atrocities committed in Iran. He said, "Silence in times of darkness is not neutrality. Silence is participation in darkness." For Euronews Culture, David Moricond in Berlin.